So I'm a big fan of holidays. I think holidays are a really nice, break in the year, but they're also a really nice time to reflect. And if we take all of our holidays kind of seriously and look at them almost like koans, I think it's, kind of monthly or bi-monthly opportunities for practice. Um, Christmas could just mean presents and Santa Claus, but can also mean what's my relationship with the eternal? What's my relationship with generosity? What's my relationship with magic? Right? Immaculate Conception, kind of magical. So I always like to take the opportunity to talk about holidays as they come up, and so we have Valentine's Day in a couple days. And so it's kind of got me thinking about love. And, we talk a lot about love here at the Zen Center, and Echo Sensei in particular likes to highlight the role that love can play in our lives, bringing love to conflict, bringing love to our day to day life, our struggles, the people in our lives who may be partners or obstacles, and how do we bring love to all of that. And so I really wanted to think about love, and particularly romantic love, right? Valentine's Day is pointing to romantic love in particular. We can use the word love to mean lots of different things. So I just kind of wanted to reflect and do a little bit of research, a little bit of study on like a Buddhist perspective of love, and maybe a little bit of a romantic love spin in particular. And it was a really wonderful exercise doing that for myself, taking a look at, just Googling Buddhism and love, I didn't know what I would get. And I came across some pretty interesting things. So I just, I don't have any conclusion, I don't have any linear narrative or any main point to offer today. Just the things that I ended up looking at were just very helpful to me in this pursuit of using holidays as a kind of point of practice. So I just wanted to kind of share those things with you, and hopefully they ruffle some feathers or tickle some fancies or inspire some kind of magic or some kind of inspiration for you. So the first thing I wanted to look at was a talk, and I'm going to try to talk quickly because my computer is lower on battery than it should be. So if I disappear, then we'll just have to go to the big screen camera and do our best. But the first thing I wanted to look at is actually from a talk from one of Thich Nhat Hanh's students, right? So Thich Nhat Hanh was a Vietnamese Zen missionary, basically, who started a huge Zen following here in America, highly, prolific uh, Vietnamese Zen teacher. And so he has a student or a successor named Thay, Thay. They don't offer any other last name or Dharma name. They just call him Thay. Yeah, people know him? Okay. And so he just says something nice. He kind of talks about, Buddhist stuff, and, true love, involves these four elements, mudita and upeksha and karuna. Um, and so it's, kind of a very theoretical look on like Buddhist love. And I didn't want to get too much into that. But he does say it's kind of towards the end here. The Buddha never said anything negative about true love. Romantic love, if you are successful, will cultivate a lot of loving kindness and compassion. And very soon your love will be all embracing. If it is true love, it will continue to grow and include not only humans, but also animals, plants, and minerals. So I just kind of really like that idea that this kind of romantic partnership love that we think of, it's just one form of love. A lot of people, like the Buddha and his disciples, actually made a vow to not engage in that kind of love. which is one kind of practice. But for those of us who do engage in that kind of romantic love, I really like this idea that by doing it successfully, by doing it with positive, healthy, holistic intention, um, we can act that romantic love with a partner, multiple partners, whatever you're doing, can actually become a tool to develop our love for the universe. And I think all of us, I know I can speak for myself, but I assume that all of us have some kind of experience of falling in love with the universe, of seeing a mountain or seeing a sunset or seeing a praying mantis or um, even sometimes getting through a conflict with someone um, feels like falling in love. In fact, that happened to me very recently, having a really difficult, combative situation that in a matter of hours turned into something collaborative and mutually understanding. And it really did feel very similar to falling in love. So, I think that's the love that we talk about mostly here in the Zendo, and the love that we talk about bringing to our lives, and the kind of higher love that a lot of spiritual people talk about. And so I love the idea that Thai is presenting here, that our romantic love, if done compassionately, if done truly from the deepest kind of love, can actually aid and feed the grander love that we have for the universe. So I think that's the first thing that I read that was really nice. Then I moved on to this really interesting story of Eshun. Eshun is one of our female lineage holders, right? So when we do the morning service during retreat, every other day we switch off between chanting the male lineage names and then the female lineage names. And lineage is a big part of Zen practice, basically meaning that the Buddha had his awakening and he had a student who he said, you know what, Kashyapa, you see what I see. Carry on my Dharma and spread it to your students. And then Kashyapa had a student, Ananda, and passed it to him. And so this lineage of passing down the Dharma, to the point where really our lineage holders today, like Seisen and all of her successors and her Dharma siblings, also hold this mind of the Buddha. The same exact understanding has been passed down. And so it's just a nice way of thinking about the lineage. And so Eshun is a very powerful female lineage holder. She has carried the Dharma, I think she was in the 14th century. 13th and 14th century is when she lived. And she was this spectacular beauty. They call her the irresistible Eshun. And so she and her brother was abbot or head priest at one of the temples nearby. And she was like, brother, I want to follow the way. I want to practice the Dharma. Please let me join your temple. And he said, sister, you are too beautiful. It's going to drive the monks crazy. It's just not going to work. You can sit at home. So she goes home, chops off all her hair, takes a burning hot iron and scalds her face so that she can be as ugly as possible, comes back and says, brother, please let me into this temple. And seeing her dedication, he ends up letting her in. And she becomes this very, very successful and very assiduous, dedicated practitioner. And she's like, kicking everybody's ass in Dharma combat and all the debates and all the Zen stuff. She's just killing it. And there's this wonderful koan that's actually from, I'm not exactly sure where it's from originally, but it was compiled into this famous compilation called Zen Flesh, or Zen Bones, Zen Flesh, 1950s compilation of multiple different sources. So I think that's the only place I could find where it's actually from. I'm sure a little more research could illuminate more about it. But it's a really nice story. So Eshun is the one female practitioner in this temple. And there's stories about her in this temple. It's just insane, right? Here's these dedicated monks in 14th century China who have left their homes and dedicated their lives to following the Buddha way. and the stories that you read about them exposing themselves to her, cornering her, harassing her, um, it kind of moved me to take a moment to really think about what women go through. If even the dedicated Zen monks are doing this, I can't imagine the female experience. So that was one thing, very powerful. And then, so she's dealing with this, and she's still, staying dedicated and true to her practice. And everyone's falling in love with her. And in fact, one monk sends her a secret love letter, trying to meet up. And so she gets the letter, and she doesn't respond. And then the next day, the master, the abbot, is giving a Dharma talk. And after the Dharma talk, she gets up in front of everybody, all the men, and she says, "Whoever wrote me that letter, if it is true love, then come and embrace me now." And that's the koan. That's it. She gets a love letter and says, "Come and embrace me now." And I just love, I think to me, the point of that koan is if we're going to love, love openly. No secret letters, no hiding. And if you are hiding, if it is something that I'm trying to disguise or not be just completely transparent about, why is that? Is it love? Is it lust? Is it coveting? Is it pride? Is it ego? There's so many things, at least in my experience, so many emotions and so many drives and desires that disguise themselves as love. That if it really is true love, if it is this love that Thai is talking about that can help us to expand our love for the universe, then do it openly. Forget about what people think. Forget about what the rules say. If it's true love, then there's nothing to hide. And it makes me think of this other koan that's one of my favorites. I forget which collection it's from. But basically, gosh, I wish I looked it up now. But there's a dying teacher, and one of his students gives a talk about the guy or something. But anyway, the point is he says something about make me a crystal palace, or make a crystal palace, or be a crystal palace. That's kind of like the juice of the koan. And yeah, that was so helpful for me when I was working on that one, to just truly embody complete transparency, complete openness, nothing to hide, nothing to be afraid of. And if there is, then look at that. What is that? So that's Eshun, totally open, transparent love. Then the third thing is looking at the precepts, right? So we talk about the precepts a lot. For those who are new to Zen or Buddhism, precepts are kind of the equivalent of Buddhist Ten Commandments, except they're not really commandments or rules as much as they are points of practice, things to look at, right? So where the first precept is non-killing, it's not so much don't kill as much as killing is a thing that's going to come up in your life. How do we work with that? How do we see that? How is killing causing harm? And how is killing actually maybe helping in my life, right? So that's kind of how we work with these precepts. And so the third precept is around sex and lust and relationship. Not necessarily true love, but it kind of does deal with love. So when we study these formally with a teacher in our lineage, we use Yasutani Roshi's write-up on the precepts. Yasutani was a teacher in the late 19th, early 20th century, and Maizumi Roshi, our American lineage founder, worked with Yasutani, and so he was like a big figure. He was a major kind of World War II era Zen teacher, Yasutani Roshi. So yeah, he came up with this really intricate practice with koans around the precepts. Um, so let's just kind of look at the different ways that we study this third precept, right? Um, so he calls it refrain from impure sexuality. And then as we study them, we look at it in three ways. Um, let's see, how's the best way to talk about this? I'll just read. We don't have to get too much into the theory of it. So the first person we read as we're studying these is Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is the guy who is credited with bringing Buddhism from India to China. Okay, so he was a major figure as well. And he has these little verses or gathas on each of the precepts. So on this precept, Bodhidharma says, self-nature is inconceivably wondrous. In the Dharma where there is nothing to grasp, not giving rise to attachment, is called the precept of refraining from impure sexuality. So that's Bodhidharma's verse. Self-nature is inconceivably wondrous. Self-nature, true nature, who am I? Oneness, Buddha nature, all these different ways that we can say self-nature. Inconceivably wondrous. Are we starting to see a pattern here? All the ways that we talk about not knowing, letting go, emptiness, inconceivable. Everything you think that you are is an empty concept. And true nature is absolutely inconceivable, which is why we emphasize in Zen to encounter, to become intimate with this true self. We do Zazen. We don't read. We don't study. We don't try to conceive of what that is. We sit and experience what we are right now, beyond conception. And it's wondrous, inconceivably wondrous. I can't say anything else. That to me is the perfect expression. In the Dharma where there is nothing to grasp. So Yasutani's comment on this sentence is, everything is the Dharma where there is nothing to grasp. You, me, this computer, this talk, sex, kisses, birds, the sky, every single last thing, anger, depression, all these things that come up are the Dharma with nothing to grasp. All of these phenomena completely empty, essentially. Absolutely. We talk about the absolute. Absolutely, they are empty. Nothing to grasp. In this Dharma, every moment where there is nothing to grasp, not giving rise to attachment, is called the precept of refraining from impure sexuality. Right? So not giving rise to attachment. We talk a lot about attachment. And from this perspective, Bodhidharma's perspective, in reality, you can't attach to anything. This isn't about don't attach. It's about you think you're attaching, that's a delusion. It's actually not true. In reality, there's nothing to attach to, so you have nothing to worry about. That's why we say you are Buddha as it is. As you are, your true self, this inconceivably wondrous self that you are, whether you're sure of it or not, there's nothing to attach to. So all these ways that we do attach, they're just empty. They're changeable. They're not permanent. They don't have to run my life. We can do something about it. What is that? For me, it's Zazen, and lots and lots and lots of it. He also says something nice here. Well, okay, so we read the Bodhidharma thing, and then there's a Dogen. Dogen has a little phrase for all of these precepts as well. Dogen being another major lineage holder in the 13th century. Dogen says, when the three wheels are empty, there is nothing to desire. This is the way of the Buddhas. So that's his expression of don't engage in impure sexuality. I love that. Dogen just finds the hardest way to talk about all these things. When the three wheels are empty, the three wheels, I'm sure you can surmise what that might mean. Yasutani says it could be body, speech, and mind, greed, anger, ignorance, past, present, future, self, other, and connecting circumstances. These three wheels, the three worlds, there's a lot of three things. Um, life, life, the human condition, the universe. When it's empty, which we know it is, there is nothing to desire. So he's kind of repeating this same thing. You can't attach to anything. You can't desire anything. We think we do, but that's really just this empty, small self that's doing that. And essentially, you can't desire anything because everything is you. Everything is me. How can I attach to myself? Let's see. Okay, so here's where Yasutani gets into some romantic love around this. When one clearly verifies this emptiness, this non-attachment, when one clearly verifies this for oneself, eliminating even the slightest thought of desire, attachment, or lewdness, then the sexual intercourse of husband and wife becomes the Dharma of unsurpassed enlightenment. How about that? It becomes the way of the Buddhas, the movement of Buddha. There are people who have had second kensho on the moment of sexual climax. That's crazy. That's wild. Kensho, sorry, yeah, kensho is a Japanese word for an enlightenment experience. And there's lots of spiritual traditions that talk about spiritual experiences through sex. I don't know about that. I'm not claiming that. I'm just the messenger. But I think it's very important that the message here is not don't desire, don't attach, nothing to desire, nothing to attach, Sex is impure. No, the point here is that when this love comes from what Eshun was asking for, this totally open, transparent, honest, deep, selfless, compassionate love, then then the way we express it, through sex, through hugging, through just quality time, is the activity of the Buddha and can be enlightening and can, going back to the first thing that we read from Thai, help us to expand our love to everything and everyone. So, that obviously resonates with me as someone who has spent most of his life single and not really engaged in romantic love. What does that mean for us? Those of us who maybe we commit to a life of celibacy, maybe we just, for whatever circumstances, we happen to not be in a relationship right now. What does that mean for us? I'm simply posing the question. And something, as I spent so many years single, I always really sat with the koan, if I am one with everyone, then how come their love over there or that romance over there, how is that not mine? That's hard to conceive of because they're not hugging me. But what could that mean? That everyone's romance is my romance. I encourage us all to sit with that. So then the last thing that I looked at that I just wanted to bring up quickly is more on a personal note, um, because we're talking a lot about attachment here. Yasutani talks, he points to this aspect of attachment. And I remember the first time I heard the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, it was presented as, the second noble truth was we suffer because of attachment. So there's a lot of talk about attachment in Buddhism. And I think I hope becomes clear as you continue to sit and as you continue to work with the Sangha and teachers and listening to these Dharma talks is that there's kind of no rules in Buddhism, right? Like we talked about the precepts, these precepts are not rules. And similarly, even some of the basics of Buddhism, there are no rules, right? Don't desire, don't attach, um, be one, be empty. Some people think, not having emotions is a Buddhist thing. Anytime you think you have some kind of rule, some kind of universal that I should or shouldn't do, pretty safe to say that it's probably inaccurate and it's probably a diversion on the right path. Even something as simple as don't attach, right? It's easy to think that, right? The second noble truth. We suffer because we desire, because we attach, because we separate. But the answer to that is not to don't do it. And I think one of the best ways that I've seen that expressed is through something that I'm sure many of us have come across, which is attachment theory, which is like a very popular, if anyone has, delved into psychology or new age, self-help, pop psychology, any of that stuff, it's kind of everywhere. But attachment theory is going around. I just learned about it in the past year or so. And I think it's relevant here because it really talks about attachment as something we have to do to survive, right? If we don't attach to our parents when we're really, really young, then we're just going to be wandering out into the street and we don't learn anything. We would probably just die, right? So the very first thing that we learn to do is to attach. And I love the way that basic attachment theory presents that. Um, so, I'm certainly not an expert and we don't really have time to go into attachment theory, but basically it says that from a very early age, we learn to attach to people in certain ways. And the way that we learn to attach when we're early, toxic or healthy, secure or insecure ways of attachment, affects the way that we develop relationships later in life. And learning that was huge for me. It has transformed the way I interact with people, the way I love, the way I see myself as a role player in relationships. And yeah, the practice of studying how I attach, right? So Zazen isn't the practice of not attaching. If I do enough Zazen, then I'll never attach to anything again. That's not how it goes. The practice of Zazen is to become intimate with how I do attach. And one aspect of attachment theory is kind of like, I'm just saying this, kind of like what Eshun is saying, which is like true love requires that we are completely open about our attachments. So if I have some kind of toxic attachment pattern or attachment style, as they say, be open about it. Even if it's anxious, even if it's greedy, even if it's, avoidant and distant, whatever it may be, speaking it, bringing it to light, being a crystal palace, professing it in front of everybody, within reason, when appropriate, being appropriate with our transparency. That's true love. That is true love. That's the love that expands and includes everything. Um, so, yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition talking about true love, successful love, expanding to love everything. Eshun's lessons of transparency and openness. the precepts, the precept practice of looking at how I attach, um, practicing with the idea that there is nothing to attach to, that my desire is really not absolutely true, the idea that in oneness, everyone's romance is my romance, and then this newer look at attachment theory and seeing my attachment patterns as a gateway to a bigger, more inclusive, more honest kind of love. So I hope this Valentine's Day encourages us all to practice with these things and become more intimate with our own intimacy with ourselves and others.